Hi everyone, it's Mike here. Thanks for joining me for another Art Journal page start to finish video. Today we're going to be delving into my prompt box, something I haven't done for a while. So here it is, my little box that looks like a book, and inside there's lots of post-it notes with random words printed on them, and today's word is going to be hands. So I'm working in my Strathmore Mixed Media Journal, and I'm going to cover a double page spread with a liberal coating of white gesso. So once I've got enough gesso over all the pages, I'm going to give it a real thorough heat blast with the heat gun to make sure it's all nice and dry. So here we go. I've pulled out some random words from some collage elements that I'm going to stick down on the pages now that it's nice and dry, and there's some images as well that I've got, just random images and sheets of 6x6 papers that have been hanging around for a while. I'm just tearing these up to create some sort of texture and a little bit of an under painting, because I'm going to cover most of this with paint. So I'm just placing them on the pages just to work out a random sort of pattern, and then when I'm happy with it, I'm going to break out the matte medium and then get them all stuck down nice and tight. So once they're all stuck down and I'm happy with them, I'm just going over once more, and then I'm going to give it a blast with the heat gun just to make sure that everything is nice and dry, and then I'm going to start adding some colour. So I'm going to use Mermaid Lagoon, one of the new colours from Ranger and Tim Holtz, and I'm going to apply that and then start blending it in and smoothing it all out with a baby wipe. I'm going to be using a clean baby wipe for each time I add a new colour, and I will be heat setting in between each colour layer. So now we're using Mustard Seed, and you'll see me again applying the paint directly onto the page and then blending it out with a clean baby wipe, because I don't want to transfer any of the existing colour or mix it any more than I really need to. I want really striking blocks of colour for this. Okay, so that was the Mowed Lawn Distress Paint, again another one from Ranger and Tim Holtz, and again I'm doing exactly the same thing, blending it out with a clean baby wipe and just filling in some of those areas. I'm going to add one more colour in a few seconds, and I'm going to then call that a day for the background. Well, just adding the paint to the background, I've still got to add a little bit more texture and a few more layers with some stencils. So there's the Wild Honey, so that's my last colour. And I'm just going to add that in the spaces and blend it out again with a clean baby wipe. So as you can see, I've not been too particular about where the paint's going. Yeah, it's actually covered some of the words up, which is fine, because I am actually going to cover a lot more than just the words as you see the page progressing. So this is archivaling from Ranger, that's the Vermilion. I'm using a Sukiniko finger dauber and the stencil I'm using there is the TCW Tiny Circles. This is the stencil that looks like all the drops of numbers from the Matrix movies, if you've seen it. That's what it reminds me of anyway. So just adding that final block of red through the stencil, and then I'm going to rake out another stencil, one that I haven't used for a while, and we'll get that added to the page too. So this stencil is another TCW one, and it's called Time Travel, and we're going to be using the archival ink, and this is the Potting Soil, a nice brown colour. Now this one I have found doesn't dry like the others. You have to give this a little bit of extra time drying than the other colours do. So I'm just adding those clocks and the numbers and the numerals, random places around the page. I'm not particularly bothered about where they're going, just randomly different areas, creating visual triangles. But as you'll see, it doesn't make the blind bit of difference because I will be covering most of this up as the page gets further and further in. I keep teasing you about what the page is going to look like in the end, but So once I've finished adding the clocks around the page, I'm going to give it a real good heat blast with the heat tool, just to make sure those archival inks are well and truly dried, because the last thing I want is for the inks to reactivate and start moving around the page. Okay, so now we're nice and dry. I've got the white gesso out, and yes, I'm going to cover both pages with white gesso. It is a wash of gesso, it's not complete gesso, it does have water to it. So you still can see the background through the gesso, but it does tone it down a lot. And you'll see what I'm going to do in a second. So out comes a fresh baby wipe, and then I'm just going to blend some of that gesso away from the outside borders, leaving the gesso just in the middle sections of my pages. And I'm going to do this again to the second page and remove the border around that, around the edge. Well, where else would a border be but around the edge, but hey ho. So just adding a little bit more gesso into the centre, just to make it a little bit more opaque, and then I'm going to heat set that with the heat tool. But I do know that the gesso will knock back, it will die back a little bit, so I'm hoping that I've got enough on. So now I'm going to do something that I haven't done since I was at school. I'm going to draw around my hand. And once I've drawn around it, I'm going to cut it out of the sheet of card and create a mask. So it doesn't matter if your lines are a little bit wobbly, you can always straighten them out when you cut your hand shape out. As you can see, my knuckles are a little bit knobbly, but that's because I have arthritis in both my hands and in both my elbows. So I will straighten some of that out, and there you go. There is my hand transferred to card. So I'm positioning my hand mask on the page where I want it, and when I'm happy with it, I'm going to break out the black gesso, and this is where everybody's going to go, no! But yes, you'll see why. I have to admit it did take some courage to do this because I really like that background, but it wasn't really important. The overall effect on the page is worth it in the long run, and all the textures and all the words and all the underpapers and all that kind of thing which is hidden behind or underneath this layer of black gesso, I still know it's there even if nobody can see it. But art journaling is all about doing things for you, not doing things for other people. So I know it's all still there, even though you can't see it. So once I've got the basic shape and gone around the actual edges of the mask, there you go, there's the shape of my hand transferred onto the page. I'm now going to cover up another big section of that right hand page and hide all that lovely texture and all that lovely colour underneath. I know it's a shame, but as I said before, I know it's still there, even if you can't see it, but it's the overall effect that we're looking for. So there you go, that's the whole of the page painted over with the black gesso, just leaving the shape of the hand behind. What I'll do now is bring in a baby wipe and start removing some of the black gesso from around the borders and the edges of the pages, just blending it out to reveal some of that luscious colour underneath. Okay, so just giving it a bit of a heat blast there, just to make sure that all of the gesso is well and truly dried. And then I'm going to move on to the next stage, which is using the, what would you call the aperture left from like the actual cutout. And I'm bringing in a baby wipe. I'm just now removing some of that white gesso that I put on there in the first place to reveal some of those patterns and colours and stenciling that we'd hidden under that layer of gesso wash. So looking at the fingers around my hand, I notice that it is a little bit raggy, so just to tidy it up I'm going to be using, well I am using here, a Faber-Castell big brush pen, and this is the black, and I'm just going to go around and tidy up some of those lines and get rid of my knobbly knuckles, and just where the paint didn't quite manage to go, just to tidy it up and to smooth out some of those rough edges and make it look a bit more even throughout. So now that the gesso is completely dry and I'm happy with the way it all looks, I've just created the perfect chalkboard to write my phrase or my quote for this page. The white pen that I'm using here is the Signo white pen. I find that this is the best one for me. I've tried all sorts of different white pens, but this one is the one that works for me on almost any surface. For me, I like the fact that it's completely opaque and it dries permanent, but it is quite a fine line. So there you go, and that's the end of this page. All I have to do now is my usual dating and sign in, and we're calling this page complete. I hope you enjoyed it, and you'll join me again for my next art journal page start to finish video. Remember, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and that subscribe button so you'll get informed of future uploads from me.